All right. We're starting to trickle in now. Hi, Lou. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, great. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. We're still missing a couple folks. I'm going to give them a couple of minutes here and all right. Megan had said she'd be, let me just call her really quickly.
Yeah, and then you can see us now.
There we are.
Now if you want to put it up. Maybe we can move it forward if you want.
Hello, Haynes.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Phyllis.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
And that does not, you can't fool me, that does not look like Janice Boland.
No. Yeah, forget that. I'll have to explain later once I find out what happened. Nothing gets
Hey,
past us. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you, Bob?
Good, good.
I'm going to call Patty really quick and just make sure.
Get my glasses too, just in case.
Okay, yeah.
You want to raise that up a little bit?
Well,
Put it on one book maybe?
I don't think it's going to really. I keep looking for. Okay, that's better. Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Everyone, Patty is struggling with the snowstorm traffic because she lives up on St. Mary's. So she had said maybe we could go ahead and get started. Is that okay with everyone?
No problem.
Sure.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. The meeting is being live streamed, just so you know, on YouTube and on Facebook. So we have an audience wider than just the Zoom meeting here. And I can follow up and give you information about who all has logged into the meeting and watched and all of that kind of thing. Just as kind of an introduction to what we're doing here tonight, as you all know, last year we received a grant to do a survey plan in Idaho Springs because there hasn't been one done, a substantial one done since 2004. And so we're a little delinquent in that. The state had created a new program, and we were actually the first recipient of this grant award to do a survey plan, which is essentially a document that looks at historic resources and what might potentially be historic resources and makes a plan to move forward with how we're going to tackle surveys in the future. As you all may know, surveys are a really important part of the work that CLGs do. That's how we are able to designate properties at the local, the state, or the national level. And it also gives homeowners and business owners access to financial resources to restore their properties if they so choose. We were scheduled to have this meeting last year on St. Patrick's Day, so a year from tomorrow. And kind of at the same time, there was a national historic incident that occurred with COVID. And so we weren't able to do it. And we actually haven't had a chance to gather very much since that time. And so we've been talking, and we'd really like to move this process forward. And so we've gone through the state documentation for the grant and what's required. Of course, we can't have a full-on public meeting, but we've come up with an idea that the state seemed to like, which is that we will have this community forum, and we will, Mary Therese, who is our consultant from History Matters, will give a presentation about what we're going to try to accomplish with this plan and kind of what the steps in the timeline are. There are some physical boards that are available at City Hall for people to look at. So anyone can come and see them and just take a look, take notes, whatever they want to do, make sure they're comfortable with what we're talking about. In 2 weeks, we will have a follow-up meeting where the community will be invited again to ask questions and make sure that we close the loop, because the intention here is to center residents in this process. So we're not just telling them we're going to do a survey, but we give them a chance to address any concerns they may have. That'll happen in approximately 2 weeks, but Mary Therese and I have to, we need to put our heads together on when that meeting makes the most sense to have. At that point, she's able to do her work, and she will kind of go around and within the bounds of that engagement that we do, look at all the properties and prepare a report, which is fairly standard for the state now. They've kind of made this a plug and play process, which makes it a lot easier for CLGs, especially small ones like us, to get this work accomplished. And that report will include, you know, just kind of a general inventory of what our historic resources are, what we may want to prioritize for preservation and surveys in the future. And it will give us the tools we need to apply for more grants from the state for financial resources for that purpose in the future. I think the general plan here is Mary Therese will give a presentation now, and we're going to record this, so this will be live on the city website forever and on YouTube and on Facebook so that people can watch it. And then, like I said, they can follow up with those boards and ask questions and all that kind of thing. So if you're approached by members of the community asking what we're doing, that's a really good way and resource to point them towards, because they can watch everything we're doing here. Do any of you all have questions before she gets started? Andy?
No.
Don, I might add that City Hall is still closed to the public, but all of the boards and the other information is available by appointment. So just call City Hall 303-567-4421. Call City Hall at during normal business hours, 8 to 5. An appointment can be made to safely view the documents in our city council chambers. Just wanted to make that clarification.
Do any of you have any other questions? All right, are you ready? I'll give you share permission, so you should be able to just share your screen there.
Okay.
Let's see. If I just want to get to my desktop, do you know how I do that?
If you are using multiple monitors,
Nope, just one.
okay. Do you have your email open on your computer right now
Yes.
behind the Zoom? So you might want to minimize any window but the Zoom in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
And then when you share your screen, you should be able to collect the Zoom window, or not the Zoom window, the PowerPoint window.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see me and see the presentation at the same time, but is it okay for me just to go ahead this way? Okay. So as Jonathan talked a little bit about this project, my name is Dr. Mary Tree Sanstey, and I own and manage a Buena Vista-based preservation planning firm called History Matters. And I am so excited that my company has been hired to assist the city of Idaho Springs with completion of the Historic Resources Survey Plan. I'm even more enthusiastic to finally convene the initial public meeting. As he said, it was originally scheduled for last year, and here, 364 days later, we've arrived. So the short introductory presentation offers more specifics about the survey plan project, answers the question, what is a survey, and goes into detail about the survey process and summarizes the work to be accomplished on the survey plan. If you have questions as we go along, there's the chat function, or Jonathan said that people that are watching on Facebook Live and YouTube often email him with questions. So either as we go along or there's time at the end for questions as well. So History Colorado awarded the State Historical Fund, or SHF, grant to the city of Idaho Springs to fund creation of a survey plan. As Jonathan mentioned, this grant is the very first to be awarded as part of the state's new non-competitive program to fund survey plans. So congratulations to Idaho Springs for being chosen to pilot a new initiative. The generous grant is funding about 90% of the project, and the project total of about $15,000. So more great news for Idaho Springs. And the funding for the entire SHF program, including all survey plan grants, comes from a percentage of the gaming tax revenues from the towns of Blackhawk, Central City, and Cripple Creek. So if you've ever gone up there to do a little gambling, you have contributed to historic preservation in the state of Colorado. The program was established in 1990 and has impacted every county in Colorado and is a tremendous asset for historic places and projects across the state. Before we get too far along, it's pretty important that we all understand what I mean when we're talking about a historic survey or the survey plan. One way to clarify the surveys we will be covering is to explain what these surveys are not. I will not be discussing the situation when, just as you're about to sit down to dinner, someone calls on the phone and asks you what breakfast cereal you eat or which political candidate you support. I also will not be talking about the type of land survey that involves transits and tripods and chains, which often comes before a road building or a construction project. Instead, we are talking about a cultural resource survey, which is the collection and analysis of information concerning the physical remains that represent our past. And in this particular case, we're dealing only with above ground resources. We're not dealing with archaeology, only things that are still fully formed, buildings, sites, places, that kind of thing. Even though the telemarketer and the land survey and the cultural resource survey are very different, they have one thing in common, which is they all are about gathering information. So the surveys that we will be planning for in the plan are all about gathering information that's useful to the town or the city, excuse me, and useful to owners of historic properties. As Jonathan also mentioned, survey is crucial for successful historic preservation. Survey allows a community to know more about the historic buildings, sites, and places that they have. And this flowchart highlights 2 steps in any survey. Then it shows how survey fits in with historic preservation as a whole. So the survey process includes 2 major steps: identification and evaluation. For example, if we were to do a survey, and it has been done, of Colorado Boulevard there in Idaho Springs, you might identify many Victorian homes constructed between the 1880s and the 1900s. And then in terms of evaluation, you want to determine why these buildings are important. They might be important because of their architecture. They might be important because of the history of the residents who have lived there over time, or perhaps a historic event happened in one of those places. And you also, in terms of the evaluation, want to know how physically intact the buildings still are, something we call integrity. As part of a survey, the most important and intact resources are determined eligible for designation, which is the next step in our flow chart. So they could be eligible as Idaho Springs local landmarks, or to the State Register of Historic Places or Properties, excuse me, or to the National Register of Historic Places. And after designation takes place, historic resources are then often eligible for special funding to facilitate different preservation treatments. That could be a restoration, which is taking a building back to a particular period in time, or a rehabilitation, which is retaining a lot of the most important historic features, but updating things like bathrooms and kitchens to make sure that they're suitable for contemporary living. Before we talk about the survey plan itself, I think it's important to consider the usefulness of surveys. Here is my sales pitch of why surveys matter. Beyond possible designation of eligible places, which we already discussed, surveys are important for learning more about the most historically or architecturally significant places in a community. This information can be used for interpretive signs, walking tour brochures, or other ways to let both locals and tourists learn more about the most important places in Idaho Springs. Some communities have used the information from survey forms and reports to develop educational initiatives, lesson plans, even badge programs, history badges for Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. Details from intensive survey forms often can assist with genealogical research, which is an unusual sometimes use for these forms. And there are also uses of survey products that are not directly related to historic preservation. Let's take marketing, for example. Marketing is based upon details about Idaho Springs historic and buildings and sites, could increase competitive advantage either for individual buildings or the community as a whole. For example, a business owner, after learning more about the key architectural features of his or her building, might incorporate those into a new logo or a promotional campaign for the business. Heritage tourism is a huge thing for Colorado. It's actually the second type of most popular type of tourism in Colorado after ski tourism. This is basically people that come to see historic places. And statistics have shown that heritage tourists stay longer and spend more. So they're great folks to have attracted to your town. And it's crucial for all businesses likely to serve tourists restaurants, stores, hotels, and others to support an effort like a historic survey or historic context to make that history and architecture of the city more accessible to visitors. And it is important for Idaho Springs to be successful to make the city the type of place where both business owners and new families want to relocate. Many businesses are drawn to communities where they can reuse historic buildings. Kind of think about Lodo in downtown Denver and how it's transformed that part of town, or offer unique community assets to their employees. I think you could very well market your small historic downtown as a great asset for people that were moving there, maybe relocating from larger cities and want something that's very walkable. Knowing more about Idaho Springs history and architecture can also help to change perceptions, transforming opinions of outsiders and reminding them that your community is a vital city that with its own unique history that you are proud to share with others. And if you combine all of these aspects, you have the potential to boost Idaho Springs' sense of community identity and pride. So now that you hopefully agree with me that surveys of historic places are important, I'd like to shift gears and talk more about both survey plans and the project I will be working on here in Idaho Springs. Let's start again with a definition. A survey plan is a comprehensive document to help communities assess what has been done in the past to document historic places and then also to make informed decisions about future survey projects. Survey plans can be especially useful when submitting future grant applications to complete survey projects. Projects detailed in and based upon priorities from a survey plan are generally more competitive and therefore more likely to be awarded. And I think that just makes sense where you're telling the state what you're going to do and then you're systematically going through project by project and applying for grants for those. Kind of lets them know what kind of road you're following as a city, and then they like to kind of see you tick off the boxes over a period of time. History Colorado has established a standard scope of work. That's the plug and play part that Jonathan was talking about for all non-competitive grant survey plans. The goal of this requirement is to make sure that completed documents are comprehensive and include public participation. Watching this presentation is the first of multiple opportunities for such collaborations from Idaho Springs citizens on the survey plan. We also have set up some socially distanced ways for you to participate, and I'm going to talk about those activities at the end of this presentation, but we alluded to the fact about making an appointment to go in and look at those display boards. The geographic span for this survey plan defines the project area. The project area for the Idaho Springs survey plan is within the city limits. So any places outside those boundaries, like the city cemetery, will not be featured in the completed plan. And again, we just need to define what the plan does cover and doesn't cover. It does and does not cover. So I'm going to complete multiple steps during the survey plan process in order to create that comprehensive document that charts a way forward for Idaho Springs over the next 15 years. So the plan itself will cover about 15 years. My first overarching assignment is to assess what already has been done and what resources exist here. So that's looking at previous survey work that's already been done, analyzing its efficacy and how well it was done. Again, survey standards change from time to time. And so something that was useful and up to date in the 90s or the 2000s may now be dated and needs to be updated. One of the things that we often say in my field is that survey is never done. It's always a snapshot in time of the time when the survey was completed. I will also analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to Idaho Springs historic places and the community survey program as a whole. The grant also calls for a limited reconnaissance or windshield survey. This survey method involves driving usually, that's the reference to the windshield, or walking the city streets to identify, which is that first step in survey, different resource types. So you might be looking at particular architectural styles, buildings that have a variety of uses, such as what is the residential architecture like, the industrial, academic, institutional, and religious. And then that second step in any survey, evaluating them in terms of their relative importance to the city. Now, again, we're just looking at them. This is more like a photo survey. So we can't tell a lot about their history. We're mostly looking at their architecture at that point. I have already completed most of this work. That's what the photo boards you will see at the City Hall. But you still may see me taking photographs of historic buildings here in Idaho Springs. The state requires 2 public meetings. We're actually going to do 3, as Jonathan had mentioned. We are holding the initial meeting right now. We're going to have a follow-up meeting to this in about 2 weeks-ish. And then there'll be the final meeting, perhaps even face-to-face if we're ready for that at the time, at the end of the project to share the results of the completed survey plan. So we're telling you what we're going to do now. We're going to get some more input from you in about 2 weeks-ish. And then at the end, we'll be sharing the benefit of all of your input to the project. So I'll take all the results from my research, the community input, survey best practice, and I will develop some goals and prioritize projects for Idaho Springs to pursue over the next 15 years. Emphasis is going to be placed on both feasible, grant-appropriated endeavors, and then there will also be lower cost options that can be accomplished by volunteers, staff, members of the Historic Preservation Commission, or interns. That way we can have different kinds of projects potentially going simultaneously, one that's a grant funded and others that are kind of community driven and allow for community participation. Right now, we're relatively early in the project, even though we've been under contract for over a year. Given those COVID-related delays, we will need to adjust the timeline a little bit. I'm hoping to have a draft of the survey plan completed during the summer. And then both the city and our reviewer at the state will have an opportunity to make comments about that draft. And then the final plan document will address any requests for edits or changes. And I'm hoping to have that final document that you can actually use to guide your future surveys ready in the fall. And then there will be a presentation, that final survey meeting or that final project meeting to share the results of the completed survey plan. And then when the city is ready, they will be able to use the new survey plan to apply for either state historical fund or certified local government competitive grants to complete the projects listed in the plan. Again, it's just kind of your tick list of this is what we do first, this is what we do second, et cetera, et cetera. So we can talk now about how the public can assist me with this project. If you are interested in starting your participation in the project right now, you can email me at my email address. It is a kind of a mouthful. It's mtanstey@historymattersllc.com. And there are 2 questions that I'm particularly interested in knowing more about. So which places are most important in Idaho Springs? This is a matter of opinion. This is what you think. There are no wrong answers. And then that second question, what are your most vivid memories associated with Idaho Springs places? These may be the same places that you named in number 1, or they could be different places. But what I'm really trying to get is kind of a finger on the pulse of the town and the city's residents in terms of which places mean the most to you, because we're going to want to focus on those places that have the most community support. That's an important part of any grant application, is to make sure you have community support for your project. So this is kind of pre-buying, getting a pre-buy-in for the places that mean the most to you. And obviously that's what preservation at the local level should focus on, if possible, is the places that mean the most to the community members. So you're welcome to email me answers to these questions, but you will have another opportunity to answer these same questions if you decide to participate in person. And that's when you make the appointment at City Hall to get into City Hall and do a socially distanced kind of activity. There are 2 stations. The first station is answering those questions, just the same questions, but you're going to be using pen and paper and then putting your answer sheet in a big box. And then the second station, there are a series of 4 photo boards. And for this exercise, you're going to get 3 green stickers and 3 pink stickers. And you want to place your green stickers next to the 3 photos showing the most historic places. And again, this is your opinion. There are no wrong answers. And then you'll place the pink stickers, conversely, next to the 3 photos showing what you think are the least historic places. And again, we're trying to get the community's input on what do you think are the most important places. And again, there might be some that didn't make the list or I didn't get photos of. That's something that you can note as well. Do not have to commit this pink and green and what do I do with them to your memory, because there is a nice direction sheet right by the photo boards when you get into the City Hall that will remind you what to do. There also will be some short handouts that kind of summarize the project, tell you who's working on it, what we're working on, basically summarize this presentation, but in a paper format. So that's kind of what we'll be doing for the first kind of part of public presentation. So in terms of that, I want to thank you in advance, and we want to get you there as soon as possible, you know, within reason. But the more feedback we get and the quicker we get it, then that will give us kind of the information that we want to discuss in that next meeting that comes up in about 2 weeks, so we can kind of start sharing those results and starting kind of a community dialogue on why are those things important to you and things like that. So this has been my short and sweet presentation to introduce you to the whole subject of survey plans. I am willing to take questions now, if there are any.
Would you be willing to share your presentation with me so I could send it to the stakeholders here and post it on the website?
Sure, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that any place within the city limits, you will be surveying, or did I understand that right?
I won't be doing any actual survey.
Okay, yeah, right. But
yeah. But any of the survey projects that we put on our dream list of things we'd like to get accomplished in the next 15 years will all be within the city limits. Yes.
Okay, right. Yeah, I got that. Okay.
Mhm.
Did you get any questions, Jonathan, via email by any chance?
No. One about the presentation.
Okay.
But other than that, it looks like we haven't really had any questions yet. And we may still. That's one thing for people who may be watching. We wanted to design this process so that you didn't have a one and done chance. We want to make sure people have a chance to come back, you know, with hard-hitting questions about this for sure. So we wanted to design it with that in mind. So there's another opportunity for that, and anyone can email any of us those questions, and we can get them to Mary Teresa so she can answer them and put them into the planning process.
And I went ahead and put my contact details on there because if you're anything like me, you're going to think of a question about 10 minutes after I'm off the Zoom. So please go ahead and feel free to copy down this information. It's also available on the We Handout that's at the City Hall. My contact information is on there. So I want to thank you for checking in via Zoom, and I'm really hoping that we get to see everyone healthy and happy for the project's final meeting. Probably 2 weeks is a little too soon for that, but hopefully for that final meeting, we will be at a place in COVID where we can actually meet face to face. I look forward to that.
Lisa, did you have a question?
I did actually. Is there anywhere else that you can see the pictures and the information that you presented on the boards at City Hall, or do you have to go into City Hall?
I could potentially, basically I have them, I have them as documents, and I think that we could convert them into PDFs that could be posted as well. If you
I think that would be really great, because sometimes getting to City Hall is a little tough.
I can understand that, yes. And you know, there's probably a little bit of hesitancy even now of, you know, we've gotten so used to all being in our houses that I think some people are just feeling a little bit queasy about going out in public in any way.
Well, there's also, oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I can help you convert those to PDFs if you like, and I'd be happy to post them.
Okay,
if
great.
we want to do that.
Okay.
Good.
Andy?
John, is the next meeting date been set 2 weeks? Do you want to announce that date or settle on that date at this time?
Mary Teresa and I were going to touch base, and then I was going to touch base with you to make sure it didn't conflict with anything. And we were thinking about that kind of happening tomorrow. Would that be okay? Or
Sure.
okay. Phyllis?
Mary Therese, on all these pictures that you've taken that we're going to see on these boards one way or another, many of the properties in town are already designated. Did you avoid them? Did you know which ones were which before you started?
I knew which ones were which, and there are some that are on there, and I thought it would be a good kind of test of the designation program and previously designated buildings to be kind of a how historic do people feel that those are, and how well publicized are they? Because it could be that if we find out that a lot of citizens decide that they are not historic, then we need to be doing more promotion for the historic properties, the listed landmarks that already exist, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
I'm back. Took me forever to figure out how to get back in here.
Okay. Was there any more questions from anyone or comments or? All right. Well, what I was thinking, we've allowed for a little bit of time for questions here. We have Mr. Hearn here with us, who came to be a part of the, to introduce himself to HPRC. And we have members of the Sites and Facilities Committee, but the library team, I don't believe, unless Bob, is Libby going to come, or are you representing the library tonight, or? Can you hear Bob?
Yeah, no, you were asking me.
Is Libby coming too from the library, or?
Well, I thought she was.
Okay, I told her 6:30, so we may be early for that. But
yeah,
would the commission like to start with Mr. Hearn and then move on, or would you like to take a break and then move on to Mr. Hearn, or?
What time do we have here?
I mean, I'm okay if we start, but I am a little concerned that it's 25 minutes early. If anyone else wanted to attend, that they would miss a lot of the meeting. Do we want to take a break?
Okay. I'm going to leave this meeting live, because if I close it, it creates many problems for the live stream. So if you want to mute yourselves and turn your video off, that is the safest possible option for making sure there's no inadvertent comments or anything like that that go live on the internet. So
Jonathan, before you do that, is this an HPRC official meeting?
Was originally going to be a regular meeting and a work session. Now it's just a work session with 2 items.
Okay.
We didn't get, there was a COA that was going to be submitted, but it didn't get all the documentation it needed in time.
I see.
Okay, should we re-adjourn then at 6 I'll have this live, but if you just come back around 6:30, we can start the regular meeting at that time if that works for everybody.
Okay, that works. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Mary
Thank you, Mary
Therese.
Therese.
Yeah, thank you, Mary
Thank you.
Therese.
Okay, let's see how this works here.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, Libby.
You're welcome. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Yes, hi, Libby.
Bob.
Are you back on?
Yep.
Everyone is trickling back in. We ended a little early, Libby, so we decided to wait for 6:30 so everybody could tune in when we said we would. So, but everybody should be back here by 6:30 here.
Yeah. Wow, that's really something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody here would know who Brian was. Do they?
Probably not. Oh, Phyllis might know, but
Yeah,
probably
she
don't
might.
want her
She
to
might.
bring it up.
Megan, I think we may all be here.
Okay. Is Patty here?
I'm here.
Okay. So at 6:28, I call this work session of the Historic Preservation Review Commission to order. Do we need to do a roll call for work sessions, Diane?
No, ma'am.
Okay, it's been so long since we've met, I don't remember.
I know.
So we have two items on our agenda for our work session tonight. The first on it is 1601 Colorado Boulevard, which was formerly Lodge of the Rockies and the Club Hotel. And we have the new owners of the lodge here, and that's Lana and Jonah Hearn. Do I have your names correct?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm very excited to hear what you're thinking about the lodge. So I will turn it over to you guys and let you just kind of jump in.
Okay, fantastic. So just to introduce ourselves, so we've lived in Colorado since '99, at least on my case. Lana, I think, graduated high school down in Parker, Colorado from Ponderosa. So she's been in Colorado a lot longer than me. We've lived in Arvada since 2000 and been pretty active member of the community down here. And essentially this opportunity for the purchase of this lodge came through our network of people that we know. And through that network, we kind of went up there and walked through the lodge. Obviously, it's in rough shape right now, but you can see there is a lot of history, a lot of opportunity. And when you go up to Idaho Springs any given day almost, especially Fridays and Saturdays, it is a pretty active community with lots of visitors, lots of people coming up there and shopping and checking out the site. So we felt this was an exciting opportunity for our family. So we put together the financing, the money behind it. Obviously, there was a little bit of crazy there getting to the finish line to close out last week. And we got that done last Friday, I believe, or the Friday before. And we walked through it all as a family now. And we're working on the plans to get it cleaned out and get it renovated. We've submitted that letter to the city that I think the city included in the packet. And hopefully everybody had a chance to read through that. But with our family, Jonah, Lana's brother, Shane, and his wife, Marissa, will also be joining us on this project. Currently, they live in Illinois, but they'll be moving back to Colorado here probably sometime over the summer. And we'll be opening up a hotel, hopefully as soon as we possibly can, in Idaho Springs.
Fantastic. Does anybody have any questions while we have them here on this call?
Comment, I'm thrilled.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What is your background and or knowledge of working with historic structures?
Well, my wife's a lot more of the history buff, so.
We have zero, so we've never done this before. We've never even done a major renovation before. So this is all very new to us, and we're just leaning into people we know who know how to do these things. So.
Okay.
And we have a lot of relationships within kind of the commercial development community. We worked in a custom countertop company for a couple years, and that gave us a lot of connections with contractors and a lot of the materials and architecture type people. And we're kind of leaning into those people right now to kind of get this project. And there's been an extraordinary amount of enthusiasm to be part of this. We're just trying to find the right people to make sure that we're partnering with the people that are going to be focused for doing it right to fit the community. Obviously, the Victorian style is what we're looking for. And I think rolling back to that club hotel image that's kind of from those 1905 pictures is really what we're excited about and what a lot of people are excited about so far.
So that's your intention is to take it back to that Victorian era.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're hoping would appeal to you guys as well.
Anything else for them?
How long do you anticipate the project will take? And it's kind of hard to say, but approximately.
Yeah, that's, I think, our biggest challenge right now is obviously the biggest challenge was kind of making sure we got the place under contract and closed. And we had a lot of due diligence beforehand to get kind of the numbers and some of the estimates. The early estimates we had was about 32 weeks, but we're learning very quickly that it's the Front Range is just under this insane demand right now when it comes to renovations and homes being remodeled and all that stuff, and it's consuming a lot of resources. So we are working hard on trying to get people that can pay attention to this now.
Andy, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the Hearns will be coming back to the Hprc next month for a certificate of appropriateness regarding renovations to the exterior of the building.
Yeah, that's our rough plan, but just to be fair, it may be May, because as we've gotten into the architecture design phase, what we've realized is that they just need a little bit more time to get that all put together. Like, we know what we want to do in our head. It's just a matter of, finding the right people that can kind of put that together so that we can present something to you guys.
We have some questions. Are you aware that there was a historic structure assessment performed on this building in 1996?
Actually, that was sent to us.
Well, that was 1996. It wasn't yours like 2006?
No, that was the one that Mike sent us just today.
Oh, okay.
So we just received that assessment today. I've done a quick scan through it, but we have to do a much deeper dive into it. There's a lot in that document that looks absolutely, it's good information.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's 20 years old or 25 years old. So any deterioration that has been identified in that is, unless it's been addressed, it's probably continuing to deteriorate. So I would scan that document very closely.
Yeah, and we've seen there's been some work done underneath there in the cellar area to kind of support and shore up a couple areas. We've had our contractors through there twice now, so at this point, they see where some of the soft spots are, and we'll be working on addressing those.
Okay. Are you working with an architect?
We're working on trying to select that right now.
Okay.
I've got a question. Have you done any investigation of the removal of that existing wood siding to see what exists underneath? Was the original wood siding on the hotel removed and then the new log siding placed on the wood framing, or do you know?
Yeah. When we looked at it not last weekend during the snow, the weekend before, we did look underneath some of those lodge coverings, and you can see that the Victorian siding is under there. So we believe there is some recovery we can get done there, but in the dining hall, the back area, we believe that is going to be mostly just the lodge siding. So when that gets stripped down, we're going to have to redo the siding there.
Yeah, we've done some extensive research, like just looking through historical records. I reached out to the Clear Creek County archivist, and she kind of gave us some information as well, so we could kind of put together some timelines of when the building was renovated, when the siding went on, and all of that. And so we're pretty sure that the wall facing 16th and part of the wall facing the alley is both where they built it out of those logs. And so that's going to present a bigger challenge than kind of that faux log siding that you can see that faces like Colorado and the other half of 16th. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because well, the log buildings, the log additions they're historic. They've been there for 100 years. So
that's all original historic fabric.
Right.
That was all added on to the Victorian style hotel. So there's no.
It's protected, I guess, is what we are meaning to say. So changing that's going to be problematic. And
at least in our opinion.
Yeah, at least in our opinion. If we follow the design guidelines, just to give you fair warning that
right,
even the log siding that's on the original building is considered just historic fabric. So, well, we could talk about this when you make your proposal, but you've got some hurdles there.
Yeah, I think you'll find that assessment really helpful.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the log siding in that back area is pretty weathered and damaged. So either direction that we go, there's going to be a significant amount of work to repair that exterior.
Right.
So you'll be presenting us with elevations of the proposed design?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think it'd be a good idea to make sure the architect you choose is familiar with historic structures. It's important. It's important that find someone who's had experience with that in the past.
That is part of our selection process. Yeah.
Good. I guess that's all we have for now.
Okay, no, this is what we want to get as much of that feedback as possible, because that helped. Right now, there's no cost to make any changes. We just need to understand what you guys are thinking and get feedback from people so that we're making sure we're going in the right direction.
Right. And
so I guess just like as a follow-up to that then, so are you saying that we should stick with the logs that the way it is, that if we presented something that went back to more of the Victorian style, that we have less success of getting approved? Like, I guess I'm just trying to, I don't want us to go down a path and spend a couple months and then have to go back on that path again. So.
Right. No, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think, just the back of the building on the south side where the dining hall is located, that was not built in the Victorian style. That was built, those are actual logs. So I think it's going to be kind of challenging for you to convert that to a Victorian looking addition because it was never that way originally.
Right. Are you familiar with the design guidelines that for Idaho Springs?
Yep.
Okay.
We've read through those.
Okay, so it's not going to be a good idea to try and cover up those logs with some sort of a siding over the top.
No.
The log structures they're historic.
Yeah.
And the guidelines call for those to be they should stay as logs, so that your challenge is going to be, how do you remove the log siding from the original Victorian building and make those two look compatible? And so I guess if it were my building, I shouldn't be telling you how to do what you have to do, but you want it to hang together as a composition, and the logs are kind of there, and they're probably not going to be able to be changed. So you might want to consider redoing the log siding on the original building, perhaps. I
guess it depends on the condition of the wood siding under the log siding on the hotel portion. But anyway, I think you'll just find that assessment informative.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wood siding that's on like the original building, needs to be replaced anyways. It's not even done well, so I mean, that's something that's going to need to be addressed for sure. So are
you talking about the original wood siding,
no, the slab siding that's been put over top of the original one? Like,
yes,
done well. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Well, I think you'd have. Okay. Well. Yeah. Do what you're going to do, and we can talk about it when you present it, I guess.
Certainly.
Just, this is a work session, so we feel like we can make some suggestions at this point, and then save you a little bit of work. There's no sense in spinning your wheels doing something that's going to be considered inappropriate, that we can't, put the stamp of approval on.
So, just have to see their proposal.
Right, we just have to see your proposal, and
absolutely.
But
I'm going to just echo. I think make sure that you're really comfortable and confident with your contractors, your architect, and the fact that you're working with a historic property. They need to have experience, especially since you guys don't have that. Make sure you have people in your corner who have that experience.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'll run into a lot more problems if you don't. You know, so. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting building.
So have you had experience, excuse me, have you had experience working on this building type, you know, a hotel before?
No, so I've done more of the work on obviously doing finish-ins on commercial buildings and trying to get those type of operations up and running in Denver, areas like this. Obviously, our passion is more of the kind of history of Colorado. We have much more passion around the communities here in Colorado and kind of a lot of the history. So this project speaks to those passions. And so the people that we partner with to make this project come to life, we're going to make sure they're the right people that work well with the community. And, you know, I'm working very hard on making contacts and connections within the community so that we get a lot of the feedback and listen to what people are looking for here, while we're able to then obviously bring together a project that's going to fit well within that downtown shopping area.
Well, we're excited about the project.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've already been getting phone calls from Mary Jane and Steve and all sorts of people that are big time Idaho Springs cheerleaders. So we're feeling good.
Well, great. If that is all that we have for, oh, Andy, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, I don't think it had been already stated specifically, but the Hearns will be doing interior work, clearing out the building. So in the upcoming weeks and months, you'll be seeing, the community will be seeing activity at the building there. So that's what will be going on, is all interior work.
Okay.
Yeah,
good. So we don't need to panic.
We got a lot of stuff getting hauled out of there.
Yeah, I bet.
If anybody wants to claim anything, by all means, it saves us time and money.
I'd love to see the inside. I only saw like 10 feet inside the door once.
I'll be up there Saturday and Sunday this weekend. So if you want to stop by, I welcome you. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you. And congratulations on your new purchase.
Thank you.
Tiny project.
Yes, it would be quite the project.
Well, great. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is the library landscape project. And we have Libby Kaplan here from the library. I guess I'm going to just turn it over to Libby right now.
Thanks, Megan. Kathy Donahue is here. She's our Friends president. And Dean Clark is here. He's a representative from our local building advisory committee in Idaho Springs. They are the two bodies that are helping funding this phase of the project. I'm not for sure how you want to go back. Jonathan invited me to kind of update everybody on the project. This project's been on the docket for quite a while for the library district, and we're pretty passionate about it. We want to have a welcoming space to the library, especially considering the amazing renovation that was completed almost 10 years ago. So just updating that, I guess we'll just start at the beginning. In July of 2018, there was a little bit, or a lot of it, of water all the way into the basement of the library. So at that time, we felt it was important to take out the ramp and repair the sump pump. We did receive insurance money for that. We went ahead and removed that ramp with volunteers, one being a contractor, but also a district board member. Following that, we have noticed deterioration of the front sidewalk and other areas around that were creating tripping hazards, and we thought it was important to deal with those in the first sort of the phase. I'm not for sure how many of you are familiar that the project was approved, I think in quite a while ago, quite a few years ago with your committee, and approved by the State Historic Fund. So maybe I should back up to that, and maybe somebody can keep me up to date so I'm not being redundant right now. Jonathan, I know Andy was getting me documents, but I didn't receive all of them at this time, so. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we approved, I believe, in 2017. Looks like our meeting of January 24th was when the library came in front of us for a certificate of appropriateness. But from reading through that, it looks like it was just for the shed and the screen. Is that correct, John?
Correct. That's all that HPRC has purview over, is a facade change to a historic building. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have a work session here. The entire landscape plan, the Historic Sites and Facilities Committee has purview over the historic sites that are owned by the city, and their recommendation goes to City Council on approval. And so we had COAs issued for the screen and for the stage, but those COAs have since expired. They only last for 6 months. And so we need to talk about what work to the facade still needs to happen and how we would go about issuing new COAs. And I think that would involve just looking at changes, which there has been one because of the work that was done with the sump pump, and potentially the rail was also an issue that we were looking at because that attaches to the facade. And so we need to look at the integrity of the building based on those two projects for the COAs if we still need those. And then the other thing was the landscape plan was approved by the state. And what we were looking for was the Sites and Facilities Committee to make sure they were comfortable with the landscape plan and that it matches the historic guidelines for the historic district that we have set forth in the city. And I think that the plan does. That's my personal opinion, but I wanted to bring it to both committees. The final issue here tonight is the World War II Memorial. And the World War II Memorial was built by an Eagle Scout, I think in 1952. And I believe it was an Eagle Scout whose father served and I believe died in the war, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So I'm not 100% on the exact history, but I know it was built by an Eagle Scout whose father served in the war. It was built in about 1952, and it is a part of the historic district and considered historic appurtenance that's governed by the Sites and Facilities Agreement. There was in the landscape plan, there was a recommendation that we replace that memorial with a stone engraved memorial, which would be somber and respectful to our veterans for sure. The question is the historic monument appropriate or is a new monument appropriate? There's some cost considerations to consider as well. And then also just this historic community tie to that monument, which I think we need to be careful about just from a community asset preservation standpoint in the city. And so those were the reasons we wanted to create this work session, which is a joint work session between the Historic Sites and Facilities Committee, HPRC, the library, and the city, because I think we all want exactly the same things. I just want to make sure that we dot the I's, cross the T's, both from the perspective of the community, the city, and then any state requirements that we may have later on down the line. And then of course the Historical Society, which the Sites and Facilities Committee is basically the body of the agreement between the city and the Historical Society. And so I think that those are the major points for discussion tonight. I'm not saying there's one better way or, there's probably multiple ways to approach this. But Phyllis Adams is here from the Historic Sites and Facilities Committee. Lou was here for a moment, but I think she might have fallen off the call. So she jumps back in, I'll let her in. But Phyllis, would you like to talk about the memorial or the landscape plan from Sites and Facilities perspective?
Sure. The Sites and Facilities Committee has never been asked to look at the landscape plan. It was never shared. with us. I don't think anyone knew it maybe should have been shared with us. So there's no fault to be found. It simply didn't happen. When the current monument was damaged, I don't know, what was that, 3 months ago, something like that? Then the Sites and Facilities Committee, not being aware of what was in your landscape plan, we were asked to make a recommendation. Build a new one, do away with it, you know, what were all the options? And our committee's recommendation to the city was that the one that's there was so torn up, we didn't really think it could be repaired, but we wanted to build one as close as possible in appearance to the old one, which is it contradicts what was in your plans. Again, we had no idea what was in your plans.
Oh, bullshit.
I beg your pardon? We had not seen the plans. I am surprised, and I will maybe direct this to Tim and Chris because I know they drew your plans conveniently. Why you would recommend, you're so big on history, why would you recommend replacing that little historic thing?
Well,
It was,
I thought it was in pretty bad condition and, you know, not really a very permanent type structure. Also, we got feedback about trying to keep the view open to the library from the corner. And so that's why we designed this lower memorial with bronze plaques on it. But like I told Andy, we're not married to the design we came up with. I mean, if the community feels very strongly about keeping what's there now, you know,
it's fine with us.
That's fine with us. We don't want to do anything that would be against what the community wants or what your committee wants.
Well,
But
I was just curious about that because I know you are so into history and wanting to maintain things that have historic value. That was a bit of an aside, but I wanted to know, again, our committee expresses our opinions. Our function is to recommend to city council. This is a slightly different circumstance. Yes, it's city-owned property, but the city isn't doing the landscape work, the library is. So I think going forward, we probably want to establish some procedure for how such things would be handled in the future. I don't know that we can't exactly go back to square one on the library landscape at this point. But as I said, we didn't know what was in the design plans. I don't know what the committee's decision would have been if we had known. Maybe we would have said, we'll just go ahead with what's in the plans, or maybe we would have still, there are 5 people on the Sites and Facilities Committee, so it was a joint decision. We might have still said, recreate something as close as possible to what's there. And I don't know what more I can say. As the conversation continues, I may have something to add, but I think right now that's kind of where Sites and Facilities stands. Except one question, and maybe it goes to Jonathan or maybe it goes to Megan. I don't know. I've understood on the basic landscaping, as in what kind of sidewalks and that sort of stuff, the HPRC has nothing to say about that.
That's within the purview of Sites and Facilities to make a recommendation. I think because it is a city-owned property and that any changes would have to go through Historic Sites and Facilities Committee. I think because there's no facade improvement, if you will, so there is no purview for HPRC. But I think as a body of experts, you know, they're here. So I think that's what we were looking for on the joint work session.
Just wanted to be clear. We can certainly go back with the Sites and Facilities Committee and look at the overall plan. I realize the state historic folks have approved it as was their right. I would bet, and it's only a bet because there's nothing for sure, minor changes would not be a deal breaker. You could go back to them for an amended approval. On the other hand, if we wanted to change everything, then you might have a problem on your hands, Libby. And I would not wish that on you or anyone else.
But I think Libby had something you wanted to jump in with there.
So yeah, I mean, if I can share my screen, I can go over stuff, but I do want to apologize to Phyllis about the communication. I did attend a city council meeting on, or city council work session on July 27th, 2020, talking about going forward. At that time, they believed that the landscaping didn't require your committee's approval. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with all the acronyms, but maybe the hand railing piece of it would. And so I apologize for the communication, but I'm happy we're all here today discussing this to move it forward because it is a win-win. Currently, the contract that the library has with the city is actually that the city takes care of the landscaping piece of the building, but the Library Association and the Friends of the Library have funding for this first phase and feel like it's a win-win if we can get the project moving forward, which is, I guess, is it okay if I share my screen, Jonathan? It's just quick slides to go through. So.
They were the ones with the program. Let's do that.
I was gonna say, yeah.
We could talk about
Is that showing up on everybody's screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sorry this isn't a scanned in view, but I think you got some of the documents. You can see here, this is the ramp that we took out, and this is where the sump housing unit is. Haynes actually did our architectural drawings and plans, which we have followed to the T when we had that insurance claim and had the flooding in the lower level of the building. And then just moving this forward, if it's moving along, you can kind of just see the aerial from the view. This is the area of the new World War II memorial. I know sightlines was something that stated that people wanted. The other thing that people were requesting, and Kathy and I both received feedback for it over the years we've been here, is that it's not very readable. So people cannot find their loved ones' names on the memorial. And it's kind of in a little clustered area, which is another area that would be improved. I'm just going to go through this quickly. Obviously, this is just the same piece scanned in. Where it talks about the replacement of the memorial, and it's just stone inscription or bronze plaques for that. When I talked to City Council in July 2020, the highlighted green area is the areas that we wanted to focus on in the first phase. This aligns a little bit with Haynes' plan moving forward, but they actually included the World War II memorial with phase one. We didn't, all the areas in blue are if we had enough money to move forward with both paving and brick pavers in this area, and then funding for the other areas.
Libby?
The green is what you want to do right away, and the blue is as soon as you can, kind of.
We wanted to do both the blue and green as long as funding allowed.
But if it didn't, green was prioritized.
Green was prioritized until the memorial it was in the condition January. Tim, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to make you aware that, and you should, Chris just sent out some newer drawings, the ones that were actually approved, that are dated, what's the date here? July 21st, 2017, are actual construction documents. And some of the things that we're talking about have been slightly modified. One of which is the World War II memorial. That is not the final design for the World War II memorial.
This is not.
But,
well, that is.
That does look like it actually.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
There's just different. If you look at the newer drawings that Chris sent out the other day, you'll see modified sidewalks around that memorial.
But it's kind of a minor thing.
It's a minor thing, but just so you know that there is something that's been issued after the drawing that you're looking at there.
I will make sure it's the updated copy. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is the condition of the memorial right now. I had a meeting with Andy Marsh and Jonathan Kane and Mary Hillman. February 24th, we talked about the removal of that. Hillman did take on that project. We all agreed that we wanted to at least remove the tarp in front of the tarp memorial until we figure out if we can repair it or whatever. And Hillman had a great idea to contact Troy Erickson, just make sure that we're honoring veterans in this process. Hillman did get a hold of Troy, but Troy was going to do some research and get back to him, and I have not been filled in since that date. So this is what the new memorial, the plans for the new memorial. I think you guys have these documents from Jonathan. I could be incorrect, and I can email them out if you do not. But again, in the area, this is kind of the profile view of it. I'm obviously not a contractor or an architect, so I'm just sharing this information with that caveat that I won't be able to answer very many questions. Following, let's see, I can on-share now. Following Hillman's removal of the memorial and deciding if we're going to replace or repair, the next step is for myself to go out with some bids. There is, like for the capstone, Haynes have found a contractor to actually get that from. Obviously, this document is from a while ago, so we'll see what rabbit holes we get into if we do move forward with replacing as opposed to repairing. Kathy, I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything.
Sorry, my dog. Sorry.
Everybody mark it on their Zoom bingo card.
Yeah.
Sorry, mine are noisy and I'm dog sitting, so sorry about that. I just am a little concerned about repairing the one that is existing. I understand the need to honor the original work there, but I'm worried about it standing up to the weather because, like I said, it was already hard to read, and I was just hoping that we could do something that would stand up to our weather a little better. I think sometimes you can be penny wise and pound foolish and repair something, and then you're right back into a problem not too long down the road. So I was just hoping that we could do something that would stand up to the weather a little more.
I'm going to jump in for a second. Something that Jonathan and I were talking about a little bit earlier today, and obviously this is a work session, we can't make any decisions tonight. But what if there was a compromise that a new memorial was put in, but the original one is restored and given to the Historical Society? And that way we still have it, but we put something out that withstands the elements a little bit better. I mean, and again, I can't speak for the Historical Society. I don't decide what they take, but John had your hand up first. Phyllis, you can talk after John.
I think that may be possible, and we'd have to talk to Historical Society. I wanted to that memorial is 70 years old. It's a metal cabinet with a wooden facade and a tin plate on the inside that was hand painted. And it is riveted metal on the bottom where there was some damage, and also to make sure that we accurately reflected all the veterans that were in the war. I did receive estimate of repair on that thing. The cabinet is about $6,500 to repair. The nice thing is it's a metal cabinet, and so the cabinet is actually not in bad shape, nor is the tin. The tin can be restored and the paint brightened. And Haynes sent me a contact in Evergreen that can do that, and she is giving us an estimate for that work. I have recently built similar signs to that memorial. And by I mean we've gotten bids for that. And for just like kind of comparison's sake, the sign in the roundabout was $27,000. And so I agree that we want to be somber and respectful for our veterans and build something really nice. But I think that we really need to be thinking about what the cost of a large scale memorial might be. And I'm not saying to be cheap here at all, but I do think that we have some very significant cultural preservation concerns related to that memorial that I have heard from other people in our community as well. And also that we have this, what is the best way to honor our World War II vets moving forward? Is it a 70-year-old sign that maybe could live somewhere else, or is it a new sign? And how can we do that? You know, this is a larger conversation too. We do not have memorials to honor veterans of every single war that's happened since World War II. And that's something that needs to happen in the city in the near future. I mean, it's a separate conversation, but maybe this is the starting point for that as well. So I just wanted to raise that point.
Phyllis?
I just wanted to clarify the Sites and Facilities, excuse me, the Sites and Facilities Committee did not recommend repairing. We recommended taking that box out of the center that Jonathan just spoke about and building a new wooden cabinet, or perhaps there's a better material, but to look as close as possible to what's there now. And there is a difference between repairing and rebuilding. And I just wanted to make that clarification.
We would rebuild the whole facade under.
This is the first I've heard about this potential compromise. And I can't speak for the whole Sites and Facilities Committee, but the idea of potentially doing like the brand new one that's in the plans, but taking the pertinent parts of the old one, if the Historic Society is interested in accepting something like that, that would be, something we could consider.
My concern, Phyllis, with trying to build one that mimics the original, well, that doesn't fall under the Secretary of Interior guidelines because it's a sign, not a structure. I kind of look at it the same way. Is that, do we want to build one that looks like the old one? You're not supposed to do that when you're doing buildings. So I feel like that to do that maybe isn't what we'd want to do.
Well, that was with the information we had, that was nevertheless the recommendation we made, and we thought we were making it to the city. And I guess, Libby, you should have been copied on that. So we're even.
Libby, did you have something else? You're muted too.
Yeah, so I just, again, want to mention that in no way am I discrediting anybody that made that memorial. For that memorial to last 70 years in the weather that we experience here is pretty impressive, and it is beautiful. And but I also have experience, and many of our librarians have had experience trying to help family members find people on the memorial, and it's very frustrating for them to not be able to track down or appropriately read their or honor their family members or friends in that memorial. Again, it's up to you guys. Obviously, it's the city's decision, and we have these processes. But I also know that we will have to go back to the State Historical Society or the State Historic Fund if we are planning on changing that, which we can do, and is not an end game facility, but it seems like an interesting direction forward when we have this beautiful option before us, and you have funding assistance from the library to move forward in that direction. So
I have a question. Does the approval from state historic funds open-ended, or does it expire at some point, or maybe has expired?
No, it is not expired. We have until October 27th, 2019. I think that letter might be included with your packet, but if not, I can get that to you. So I only have 8 years, so I've got to get going on.
Yeah, you know.
No, Libby, I think that you're reading that wrong, because I thought that when I first read that too. But what it says is the covenant agreement of your state historical fund contract remains intact through October 27th, 2029. My understanding is that because of the state historic fund monies that were used 8-9 years ago, you are under contract with them to get projects approved through that date.
That's
So I
right.
don't think that means that you have that time to finish your project. I think that means until 2029, you have to get approval for your projects. Is that, Phyllis, you were a big part of that project. Is that correct?
Yes, and so were Tim and Chris. And you're basically right. To answer Bob's question, I believe that the approval is open-ended if there is no change. And of course, if you were to make this change or any other change, you would have to go back, I think, for a supplemental approval. But I don't think there's any expiration date, Bob, on what the State Historic Fund, the letter they issued.
Okay.
Right.
I would like to take a moment. Like I said, we can't make any decisions tonight's work session, but I want to hear from the rest of the HPRC right now on what you guys are thinking with the memorial. Do we repair, replace similar, replace different? Rick, your hand is up, so you have the floor.
Well, just a single thought occurs to me, and that's that the memorial was built to memorialize the veterans of the war. And it sounds like we're spending an awful lot of time trying to memorialize the person who built the memorial. And for me, that's the wrong message. The message is still memorializing the veterans of the war. And so I think keeping the thing around as a sentimental moment, a sentimental idea because of a Eagle Scout building it isn't as important as the memorial itself. And so I think paying homage to the World War II veterans is the more important message. And so I don't know that trying to rebuild something in the style that person built it in is actually worth keeping. I think it's much more important to put something in there that actually honors the service of the vets and not honors the work of or the workmanship of somebody who built something out of the products he had available to him back 70 years ago. That's my personal opinion.
I wasn't trying to say that at all. I was saying that I've heard from many veterans that memorial is really, really important and that they really think that we need to be careful about how we move forward with it. I agree with you, the memorial is way more important, but I'm not saying that unity.
I didn't hear the last part of what you said, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you what I've been told by members of our community is what I'm trying to reflect, that memorial has sentimental value and is a community asset. And that doesn't mean that it needs to stay there. Like I said, and like you said, it's more important to memorialize what that means for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that that's
well, and I wasn't really addressing your argument as much as I was addressing what Phyllis was saying. Is for me, it wasn't the memorial itself in the encasement that it's in right now. It's the idea of memorializing the people who fought the war. That's what I'm saying should be addressed. I don't think it has to be it has to be something that's in the context that it was back in the day when they built it 70 years ago. I think any really decent, respectable memorial serves that purpose. And then I think we do have other wars that we need to address going down the road. So that's my opinion.
So John, you had some basic information of when you think it was installed in the Eagle Scout. Do we have any, does the archives have any information? The kid was probably 17 or 18 years old doing an Eagle Scout project. Do we know anything about him, his family, does he think that his memorial was going to last in perpetuity? It would be nice to know if there's some kind of intention behind it.
And it may not. I know that John Bordoni has more information about this, and I could ask him, and I could try to find out a little bit more since we have to meet about this again. And one thing I was also suggesting is we could look and see what that memorial sign would cost to build. That would be the other perhaps pertinent information here. There had also, I don't know if this is, one of the questions that came up was, would it be better to have, we have our plaque, our wall of plaques out by City Hall, and some of those plaques have degraded a little bit in the weather too. Would it be worth, I know I had come up with an engraved memorial as well. Is that something that would be considered for a new one? Because I was just saying, if we had a cost comparison of what we're looking at, not that that should be the factor here, but is that something we want to consider? And then the other question is just what is, we want to get something in place as soon as possible, so that we're not having a hole in our community where our World War II memorial is supposed to be. And so if there is, I guess what I'm trying to say is there any kind of factors that influence the decision here, one way or the other, that we should consider before the next meeting?
I have another question that kind of brought up. Is there, don't shoot me, is there any way, is there any reason that World War II memorial has to be on that site? Can we incorporate that into where we have the plaques over by City Hall and then extend it into, more recent wars? Because if the idea of what it's memorializing is more important than the memorial itself, does it have to be on that same site? Oh my God, mind blown.
But just one comment I had is kind of related to it. The cannon on the corner there actually represents the earliest war the city was involved in, and about the time of our founding, actually. And that was presented by some of the Union soldiers. And I don't know if we want to go back beyond World War II or not in any more memorials, but my thought was that a war memorial that does include all of the various conflicts that are appropriate could be in the corner where the memorial and the cannon already are. And I think the cannon is definitely something that should stay there. That's been there a really long time. And so I was thinking of a somewhat more comprehensive war memorial in that corner. And I understand that would involve state historic funds again and all that. So that's kind of another element of that larger conversation that Jonathan referred to.
Mike, I see that you have unmuted yourself. Do you have a comment or a question?
Yes, well, I just wanted to mention, because this has been come up a couple of times in the conversation, is that, as you might know, the city's historic design guidelines do include guidelines that deal with site work or site features. And further, the National Register actually, although it is primarily buildings, does also include other things besides buildings. So there is guidance through the National Park Service and the Secretary of Interior, in addition to what you have in the design guidelines. But you have guidelines right now regarding fences, walls, sidewalks, patios, signs. So I think your responsibility, I think, does extend beyond the building.
That's what I've always thought. Everyone, as Mike referred to, everyone thinks of the buildings and the structures and their roof and how their doors look and so forth. But I was on the Hprc when the current guidelines were adopted, and I knew there was a section that addressed some of these extra non-structural parts of a property. So this goes back to an earlier question. I would think that maybe the sites and facilities ought to make a written recommendation. Normally our function is to recommend to City Council, but we could certainly share that with, copy it to the library, copy it to Hprc, and eventually when the library is ready to come and ask for their whatever COA it's determined they need, then the Hprc could have that as just another piece of information to take into consideration. How does that sound? Vague as anything, or?
Right. I think I'm at the point where I'm not sure what we're supposed to do.
Well, that's why I thought it might sound vague.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we kind of threw a lot of things out there that we need to decide on with this memorial. I mean, we need to decide where it goes. We need to decide what we're doing with the old one. We need to decide what we're doing if it's not keeping the old one. We can't make decisions tonight, so no one can put a motion forward, but I don't know. Patty, did you have anything you wanted to say about this topic?
So I kind of agree with Rick. I think the reason for the memorial is what's the most important thing that we need to address. Cassandra had thrown up a little post saying, if we do a new memorial, can we mention the Eagle Scout on there, that he was the creator of the first one, and this is, kind of honoring him doing that. I was also thinking about the other wars. How we kind of try to protect the cannon. Could we make it almost like I'm talking with my hands, but you can't see that. Could we almost make it like a short wall, and then maybe the next war we decide to put out there is another piece of that short wall that could go on the sides of the cannon to kind of protect the lawn. And I know that messes with the landscaping and stuff, but just an idea to throw out there so that we can get more than one item addressed at one time.
Well, and it's Patty, I actually thought I was thinking about the Vietnam Memorial in DC, which is like that. It has the different wall panels that, we wouldn't want to copy that, but you could do some kind of like a horseshoe curved panel that goes behind the cannon.
Right, but you'd want to keep it small enough so that it's not hiding our beautiful library or any of that facade. So, maybe like 3 feet high or something like that. Just another idea to throw out there.
And I'd like to throw out a thought that maybe a good place for all these memorials is somewhere along the Greenway.
1'10". When we were working with Genevieve and Sue Lathrop, 5 or 6 years ago, and we went through all sorts of design studies. And one of the things that we proposed was having a wall behind the, where we're showing the seating now, which is like 1 foot 10 inches high, behind the cannon. We had proposed having a wall there with the names engraved on the wall in some manner. And as I recall, the State Historical Fund had an issue with us having something that was taller because they don't want the view of the library blocked from the intersection. They wanted to keep something low. And that's part of the reason for why we designed the revised, the stone monument with the bronze panels on it. It was deliberately kept lower than the original because they didn't want the view blocked from the street to the building. So,
but we do
for
have
what
a
that's
wall.
worth.
Yeah, we do have a wall that goes around the back of the cannon, but it's low. It's designed for seating. So I was wondering, is there a place in the library where the World War II memorial could be placed? The one that's out, in front right now. Is there any location available for that? I think we had talked to Genevieve about that possibility.
But Cassandra just posted a link in the chat to a curved stone wall if anyone wants to take a look at that. I saw somebody with their hand up a minute ago, but I don't remember who it was. John.
Again, I was going to say, you could give staff direction to work with the library to figure out what the cost of another memorial would be potentially, or to look at some options if you guys want to do that. You could do that without taking action.
Okay.
So we're prepared.
I think if the rest of the HPRC is in agreement, I think that's probably where we are. I would like staff, I think, to work to get some bids on this, because like you said, we don't want to skimp, we don't want to base everything on that, but it does make a difference. Let's get some bids on some different types of memorials, maybe come up with some options of locations, if there might be a better location along the Greenway or over by City Hall. Where are we right now though with the deterioration of the current monument? Or does something need to be done with that immediately?
We wanted
Libby?
to remove it.
Okay.
It is
So
my
we're gonna put it-
understanding.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, we're gonna put it, we were thinking about putting it in the hose house that we just restored up by Virginia Canyon, because it's empty and out of the weather, and we can leave it in there without it being disturbed.
Okay. Libby, did you have more to that?
Yeah, I think it's important that we do that sooner than possible. The tarp structure in front of the library is not a very warm welcome to the town. Did Andy or Jonathan, have you heard from Hillman?
Regarding?
Removing the memorial to the hose house?
We're looking for direction. I mean, the direction was stated earlier, the direction when the memorial was damaged, we took immediate action to try to get it fixed or protected, and then get estimates to get it repaired. And that's when it was brought about other plans for the landscape, for that particular memorial. So
when we met on February 24th, though, Hillman was going to talk to Troy Erickson, and as long as he had his approval, the city was going to move it to the hose house. If you're waiting on direction from me, then there's a miscommunication.
I think it was Troy was really the thing. So we can close that loop.
Well, there's also concern about moving it, that it might not. One of the contractors we had look at the memorial thought it'd be better to just repair it in place. And that was kind of the direction we were headed. But then again, we ran into the question about, do we repair or restore the memorial that's there, or go with a totally new memorial as is in the landscape plan? I think what I'm hearing now, I think the direction should be, I would recommend that we go ahead and remove it, because it's clear that we don't have quite know where we're going with this. So I think it does need, it is covered in blue tarp. It needs, if we're not going to repair it soon, I think it needs to be removed and protected, and then we'll figure out what direction we're going.
And I think, again, if the rest of the HPRC is in agreement, that's going to be my recommendation, is to remove it to prevent further deterioration. City staff can work together to come up with some options, some cost, work with the library. And then John, can you put out something to the community as to the effect of the memorial has been removed, so that people don't lose their minds that it disappeared?
Yeah, and if, don't feel obligated to jump on there, but, and you don't have to defend me for sure on there, but if you do have opportunities to have conversations, and just make sure people know we're just trying to treat it as a memorial and somber as it should be, and respectful to the veterans and everything and their families, I would certainly appreciate that as well.
I have a quick question before we go on. Andy, can you tell me if the contractor that looked at it was concerned that if you tried to move it, it would be damaged further? Is that why they recommended to repair it in place?
John, you might have a little more information on that than I do, the details on that.
Yeah, there's also a concern about the pedestal that it sits on, because it's a concrete pedestal with electrical coming through it. And I know John was a little bit concerned about the safety aspect of having that there, because it's going to require, it's not a huge job, but it's a job that is going to require, a large amount of work just to get everything safe. And so that would be the other piece, and that's beyond my understanding of the project about how we treat that pedestal.
Okay.
So I think, John, just to restate another way, I think what you're saying is there'll be a concrete base there, maybe with electrical conduits, and we try to make that safe, but that'll be less obtrusive, but it's going to be there unless that's dug out. I mean, that's going to be there and not be particularly attractive. So although it'll look better, we're still going to have the base there. Is that right? Okay.
Phyllis, have a comment?
Well, I guess first a couple of questions for Libby, just to make sure I understood what I heard her say. You said that the Friends and your local back have funding. Is it presumed that they can completely cover the cost for the memorial as in the landscape plan? Do you have enough money to do it?
At this time, I don't want to say that because we don't have a bid on that piece of the project. But I think we would look at finding funding to do it while we do the sidewalk. But with that, I mean, the caveat is it sounds like the city wants to take over this project. So I'm just trying to, I think before I talk funding, it would be nice to have a timeline and know exactly what boards need to approve this project before we keep moving it on. Because like I said, I presented in July 2020. And so to the, at a work session, and at that time, City Council mentioned that we were welcome to move forward with that. Obviously, we had some other stuff come up and that did not come through. So getting this done maybe is advantageous and we can save money on pouring the concrete. But for me, what piece of the project needs to be approved by the historic board? What piece of the project needs to be approved by Phyllis's board? Sorry, I'm not familiar with the acronym, so I'm kind of like whatever. And then what piece needs to be approved by the city? So I know exactly where I need to locally go. I have to tell you, when I took on this project in 2017, I thought this was all completed and that the State Historical Fund was the final step of that process. And with the delay of time, I understand that things do change, but a timeline would be great for me, and what pieces of the project need to be approved by who.
But the question of, is the city going to do part of it and the library is going to do the rest of it? And if so, should the city do what's in the library's plans? And that's exactly why I asked if you did truly have the funding, or you're just pretty sure you've got the funding. Because that at the end of the day, that could make a difference. It does seem to me that even if the city's going to take it on, that there has to be collaboration with the library and its that's a lovely cat, Tim and Chris. There has to be collaboration, and it has to go along with the library's landscape plan as is or as amended. But I'm a little concerned to hear everyone else talking about designing
as right.
I guess library ought to be presenting. And that's what I will go back again to repeat what I said before. To avoid, this is an extra confusing situation because there's an extra level. This is not just the city and the sites and facilities and maybe Hprc. We have the library and we have the Friends of the Library and we have the back committee and so on and so forth. I would propose, and I'll ask the question again, I would propose that sites and facilities look at the whole plan instead of just the memorial and make a written recommendation to the city, to the Hprc, and to the library. And then the library can move forward, or the city can move forward, and the library can move forward later, whatever. I guess I'll phrase the end of my question differently. Does anyone think that's a bad idea? Okay.
Don, you had your hand up.
Yeah. This is a Friends of the Library question. I know you guys have been planning on a project related to the memorial, and the city kind of was too. I think it seems like a really good opportunity for collaboration to maybe, just make pennies go further and build a really strong relationship for moving forward on these projects. Is that something that we can work together on this project? And it seems like, you already have the design and everything, and we can, I guess I'm just asking, is this a project we can work collaboratively on? I think we can probably, we can knock out something, and Libby, for sure, you lead the way, because it's your project for sure. I just am thinking that this may be a good opportunity for us to collaborate.
Yeah, I mean, that is ultimately the goal. Sorry, Kathy, I'm sure you want to speak, is that we can collaborate. And again, we see this as helping the city in that welcome space as people come to town, and helping the library be a welcoming, warm space where we can have, you know, versatile programming or whatever we need there, along with honoring our historic preservation. But I can't, I mean, if you guys, HRPC feels like they're gonna move the memorial, then library funds will probably not be used for a memorial down at the River Parkway, which is completely fine, and we'll support your decision or whatever, but I don't want to go on record stating that we have the money for a project if that's the way the project's gonna move forward.
Anything else? I mean, I guess, is it possible to get some more information and get this on an agenda for next month?
Is it also possible to separate part of the project because when you looked at what Libby's plans were, she had the green stuff they were going to do initially, and then the memorial was in the blue, which is something they were looking at, you know, as a secondary piece, because I understand some of Libby's concern with, she's been working on this since 2017. This is a really long time. And if we have to go back through design process or more debate or working the collaboration appropriately, I could see that be another year or two. And that's a long time for the project.
Yeah, we actually started it in 2015. So.
That's even worse.
I actually have that. I printed that plan today.
In fact, we have 3 job numbers on this project. That's how stop and start this project has been.
I was looking through my email for anything that related to this, and I couldn't believe it went that far back.
I just would like to see if we could work with something to help the library get started with this, because the memorial sounds like, because I agree with what Rick said. I think it's the idea of the memorial, and also how do we memorialize all of the veterans from all of our conflicts. This might be a bigger project than just something to do on the library.
The other piece of this is the landscape plan, I guess, and that is something that, and the COAs, that was the other piece that we haven't fully discussed. The COAs are expired, but I think from my conversation with Libby, it sounds like they're not required anymore. And then it sounds like Mike is saying that we do need to review the landscape plan based on the historic guidelines. And so that would be the other piece of this that would kind of seal the envelope here for the library. Also on the memorial, it would be, I think we could separate out this memorial project, because I think it's in the city's interest to like get that memorial built, the World War II memorial built or replaced quickly. Nobody wants it gone. So we want to move that piece forward if we can. It's just a matter of what's the best option. And I think we could maybe do that and still have a larger conversation about memorials as well.
Mm-hmm.
So can we, because is the library not doing the shed and the screen anymore? Because those were the 2 things that we issued the certificate of appropriateness for. Are those off the table? They're out of the plan?
Correct, as long as it's approved by the State Historic Fund. We just had feedback from mainly the police department, worried about what those would turn into. And the rec center has a beautiful stage that we felt like it was a little bit of a redundant and not needed. So at this point, that is what we're looking at, but there is not an official approval of changing that up.
Okay. So John, tell me if this is what can we have the library submit the landscape plan both to HPRC and historic sites and put those on the agenda for next month and get those moved through so the library can get started on this? I mean, obviously contingent on what the state has to say, and then separate the memorial project out as its own thing.
I think I'd defer to Andy and Mike Davenport on that question about.
Well, I think one thing that needs to be determined is whether or not a new certificate of appropriateness is needed for this project. I think there seems to be some lingering confusion about that. The certificate of appropriateness was limited to the stage and the wall several years ago. And now if there needs to be additional review and official action by HPRC, then I think that we need to figure that out tonight and have a direction. I think, to be fair to the library, we've been asked to provide a timeline, and I think that's fair. So I think if Historic Sites and Facilities is gonna do the review of the landscape plan and make a recommendation to council, I think we need to have some idea of a time frame on that. And I think the same thing, we need to understand what is the purview of HPRC with this project.
And I apologize, I do not have my design guidelines in front of me right now. But that was kind of why I was thinking, could we get it on next month's agenda to get that moving forward? Does anybody have a copy of your design guidelines in front of you or nearby?
I can look.
As
Okay,
Mike
'cause I-
mentioned earlier, I know your sidewalks and signs and things.
Yes.
HPRC may have nothing to say about the ground covering you choose, but
I don't think there is something on ground cover, although there is the general category of sidewalks, patios, and driveways.
Yeah.
Exactly. So your sidewalk, your walls, this knee wall that goes around behind.
Yes, walls and fences and signs are also, number 28 is signs.
Exactly.
So there are about 3 or 4 different site related design guidelines. And as I mentioned before, there is actually, through the Park Service and the National Register, there actually is guidance regarding that if that information's not in the in the city's guidelines.
Well, my point is, I think it's clear. It may sound confused or difference of opinion, and I understand why Andy would say that, but it seems to me that it's clear that at least some of the plan requires HPRC approval. It also seems clear to me that the whole plan, you'd like to have an opinion on the entire plan from the sites and facilities. And I received the email that Chris sent out that had the whole plans with the construction documents and the whole thing, which I can share with my committee. We can get, it's up to Libby if they're ready to apply to be before the HPRC next month. But the Sites and Facilities Committee can do a review and issue a written opinion in time for that. And then if they don't make it, you'll have it for whenever they do. But it's kind of up to them when they can have it ready. Right, Libby?
And Phyllis, just to clarify, you're asking for the project in the entirety, or right now, do we just want to focus on the World War II memorial?
While we're looking and talking about the memorial, we may as well look at the whole thing, since I have the plans that Chris sent. And then we can give a written opinion on the whole thing. We can focus on a separate paragraph if it will be helpful on the memorial. But if there's anything in the overall design, we like it, go for it. I mean, I don't foresee complicated comments at all.
And along the same lines is that it already has, the plan itself has already been reviewed by History Colorado. So there's not, and they are generally reluctant about making changes to approved plans. So it's probably not really reinventing what's already been done. It's more a matter of certifying what has been done and then deal with any issue.
Yeah, and I think as HPRC, I'd be more comfortable if both Historic Sites and Facilities and HPRC had a chance to look at that whole plan. Because Mike, I think you're right. If State Historic Fund, History Colorado has already approved that, your plan's already done, right? I mean, except for this question on the memorial, which I think we're kind of talking about trying to separate out right now until we have a bigger discussion. But there's no reason we can't get the rest of the plan, a certificate of appropriateness issued for the library to move forward on this project that started 6 years ago.
And
we work quickly here in the city.
Yes. We worked really quickly at the library for 2/3 of it, and then there wasn't money. That's why there's been this delay. Megan, am I correct? If there were to be changes, and there may be, for example, the complete removal of the memorial, could you not issue a COA contingent upon state historic fund approval?
We should be able to. I think so. Yeah.
So that wouldn't hold you up if Libby does have to go back and ask for a minor change in the approval, right?
Yeah, we should be able to put contingencies in there. Does that work for everybody? I mean, does that work for Libby? Does that work for you? Does it work for you, Phyllis? How about the rest of HPRC?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to kind of make a decision and move on with where we're going on this, or we'll just sit and talk in circles all night long, I think. So my understanding from tonight's meeting is, Libby, you're going to get the full plan to HPRC and to Phyllis for historic sites and facilities. If you are ready to present for your COA next month, we'll get it on the agenda and we'll get that dealt with. John, you're going to work with Libby on talking about some funding and options for the World War II memorial to be held as a part of a larger discussion of memorials within the city in general. Is that where we're at right now?
One minor exception, Libby, you don't have to send me the plans. I have them. One person off your email distribution.
Yeah, this is my first time hearing about the COA approval tonight, or not my first time, but that it's been officially announced that that is needed. So I'll just need all the guidelines of that process. So I'm prepared for that meeting. I'm assuming Jonathan or Andy can get that to me.
And I can work with Jonathan in terms of helping this get through the paperwork side of it.
And Libby, I'm going to assign Mike Davenport to be he's our contract planner, one of our contract planners, and he'll be point of contact with you in preparing for that. So,
thank you, Mike.
Appropriateness.
And I don't anticipate that if the state has approved this plan, I don't anticipate, and don't hold me to any promises, but I just don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of contention here, because we work under the same guidelines the state does. We all work under the federal guidelines. So, but let's, as John said in the beginning, let's dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure we're getting everything done that we need to before you break ground. Is there anything else? There was nothing else on our agenda. Anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
So one clarification I just would like to make. I think it was mentioned that Libby and John would be working on the memorial, but that really is historic sites and facilities. It needs to make the recommendation on that. So it's really not up to the library. It's not up to the city. It really falls within that committee to make a recommendation to city council on where to go, and then staff will
okay.
the direction of council. So I just want to clarify on that. I don't want to necessarily put that on Libby or put that on John. I think we'll certainly work with the committee, but I think they need to do their review and then make a recommendation to city council, and then we get direction from city council. They make the decision on that on the memorial. So I think we all want to work together on that, but I just want to make sure it's clear that it's really not staff driven. That's going to come from the committee.
I would like to ask Kathy a question before the Sites and Facilities Committee begins a discussion. How, and please understand this is hypothetical, how upset would the Friends be if the memorial were moved physically off the library property?
The Friends voted, we all want to stay there. We all think that It's been there, you know, the 70s.
Got a real slow connection.
Lost your video, lost your audio, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy, try turning off your video and then speaking. It might help.
Oh, sorry, you're not hearing me?
No.
Okay, I just said that all the friends voted for it to stay where it is, and that's what we would like to do. It's been our project. We've had funds set aside, which we would probably at this point would match since before 2010 to do the World War II memorial, and we voted for it to stay there. That's what we would like. We think it's kind of a good entrance to the town from the Mount Evans exit, etc. So,
okay.
And there is other military presence there with the cannon and so on. So,
okay. I just wanted to get a sense of how your group felt, and I think Sites and Facilities will take that into account.
You know,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for letting us know that. Thank you, Andy, for clarifying that, how that work needs to break down. I think we have a plan. We have a plan to find a plan. But thank you, everyone, for coming. You know, we're all in this together. We all want the same thing. We'll get there. Lana and Jonah, sorry. Thank you for coming to talk to us tonight. There's nothing else. I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 7:55, and we will plan for Hprc to meet next month with hopefully some more information from the library and also maybe the lodge. So, and I think maybe one other project potentially.
I hate to do this, Megan. I just want to clarify, you want me to get bids to replace the memorial or to repair the memorial? Are Jonathan and the city is doing that under your direction after approval? I'm sorry, that is not clear if it should be clear right now.
Hopefully, I think we should get bids for both. Because I think until we've decided what we want to do, we should have all the information we can.
That's right.
I would have guessed Libby's plate is full enough, but from what I heard Andy say, my committee will make a recommendation, and then you'll know. If we recommend, for example, to go with the plan as it is, then what's the point in getting bids?
Well, because if the
time.
I'm just thinking though, if the plan is a $40,000 versus a $7,000, that might make a difference on a recommendation. I mean, if you're looking at two comparable costs, that's different. But if you're looking at two things that are very, very different from each other, that might make a really big difference in what we choose to do, or not what we, but what is chosen. So I would be more comfortable if we had cost estimates both ways.
Well, we do already have proposals to restore the existing memorial. So we do have that. So if the library wanted to get a bid on what was designed, that's up to the library. That might be helpful. I don't know what kind of money we're talking about there, but.
Well, and I think, Libby, you had said that was kind of your next step, was to start getting some bids on that memorial design way back in the beginning of this meeting.
Yes, that is on my docket, following that we knew we were it was a viable option. And the removal of the existing. So no problem.
I think
When is the next meeting date?
What would that be? I think they're all viable options at this point. I mean, to be honest. John, what is our next meeting? Where are we?
It's the third Tuesday in April, whatever that is.
The 20th.
Ooh, we can meet on 4/20, everyone.
Our district board meeting is also that day, but we'll make sure we end that one in time to go. So if I could have a time, that would be great.
We typically meet at 5:15, but we could.
Does that work, Libby?
It coincides directly with our district library board meeting, so I'll work at changing that time.
Okay.
So we do have, Megan, I just want to confirm that we do have consensus from the group that we should remove the existing memorial and get it undercover and get, am I correct?
I believe so. Nobody
Yes.
spoke up to say no.
Okay. All right. We'll the city will proceed with that and we'll put it in safekeeping until we come to.
Yeah. Let's at least like stop deterioration while we're at it. So.
Right.
All right. Anything else? Thank you, everyone. This was great. We're getting there. Have a good rest of your evening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Megan.
Take
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for your time. That was
Yeah,
extensive. Appreciate it.